2024 NFL win total predictions, specifically the 2024 New Orleans Saints win total predictions. We are here with Pro Football Focus, PFF Steve and PFF Sam, looks like from their homes. Interesting, controversial yet brave. So we've already done something like this. We previewed the New Orleans Saints schedule, went through all the games. I landed on about 9 wins. So we're going to revisit that. We're going to break down the schedule. We're going to break down some betting odds for said schedule, and we'll see what Pro Football Focus comes up with. I think the floor, 7 wins is pretty much guaranteed. I think 11 is doable. Crazy, but doable. So I'm looking for them to be somewhere in the middle there. I wouldn't be surprised at all if these guys landed on 9 because we seem to kind of be in lockstep a lot of the time. So here we go.
You know, they only did win 9. They won 9 games last year. They tied for the top record with the Bucs. Bucs got the tiebreaker. But the Saints at 7.5, Derek Carr played better down the stretch. And I mentioned with the Falcons, the easiest schedule in the NFL. Well, the Saints.
So, yeah, there you go. 7.5 he's referencing is the DraftKings, and really it's market wide. 7.5 is the season win total for the Saints as far as Vegas is concerned. I would advise taking the over. I will have the over. The 228 Syndicate, the betting group, one of the greatest betting groups really in the country. We are planning on a pretty heavy investment in the New Orleans Saints over 7.5 season win total. So that's what he's referencing there.
Saints have the second easiest schedule in the NFL. And as you astutely pointed out, it's probably because they play the Panthers twice. And most of the power rankings are going to have the Panthers as the worst or second worst team in the NFL. So where you go?
They do have a very manageable back end of the schedule. Like, yeah, we play the Panthers twice, which will drag down our strength of schedule. But we also play the Commanders. We also play the Giants. We also play the Broncos. You could argue the Broncos are the second worst team in the NFL. So we play the Raiders. Like, we do play some pretty bad teams, along with the Carolina Panthers, who are really bad in our division.
Going here with the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I think there's a lot of things that would skew positive for them, right? The fact that their schedule is really easy. The fact that I do think Derek Carr is being underrated now because the start of the year and therefore the overall sort of production, the overall performance numbers are not encouraging.
You know what's kind of crazy about that? Like, and look, trust me, the Saints offense at the beginning of the year was absolutely horrific. It was terrible. It was not fun to watch. It was garbage. I'm with you there. But if you look at the big picture, Carr's numbers are not that bad. Carr's numbers compared to like Baker Mayfield's, it's like, well, this is pretty similar. And one guy got $100 million and the other guy is getting told that he shouldn't even be a starter in the NFL. So I'm not, and even the record, like if you say, man, the Saints were terrible last year, they were boring, they were this, they were that, they still went 9-8. You know, oh, well, they had the easiest schedule in the NFL. Well, the Falcons went 7-10. So, you know. But we went 9-8. Derek Carr had a plus 15 turnover or plus 15 interception ratio. Like, could have been a whole lot worse for as bad as people are talking about the Saints.
But I think the second half of the year was much better. And again, okay, if we made this argument with Jordan Love, we got to make it with Derek Carr as well. Was that real or was that just a run of good play in the second half? If that was real and Derek Carr actually just took half the season to settle in and, you know, find his groove there and he can play at the second half of the season level all the way through this year, then I think that they're a much better team than that. The one big question mark I still have is the offensive line. I think we're still in this holding pattern where nobody knows if Ryan Ramczyk is going to be playing or not.
He will not be. I do know. He will not be playing. There's nobody that covers the Saints that is expecting Ramczyk to play. Nobody. I have not heard a single person come out and say, like, yeah, I think Ramczyk might play. He's like 70 pounds lighter. He's not going to play. The only reason he's even on the team, he's even in the league, is because he can't retire or it will destroy our salary cap. He can't retire for another year. He's going to chill this year, catch a couple $1 million for hanging out, and he'll retire as soon as it allows for the cap.
I know they restructured his contract like a month ago or so, but there's still been basically no update, I don't think, from the coaching staff. Like, hey, is he going to be playing this year? Like,
absolutely
are we getting Ryan Ramczyk or no? If he's not there, I mean, I think that's a real problem. Like the interior of that offensive line already isn't great on paper. The tackles would then be Trevor Penning, who's been so far a failed for a high end or high draft pick of a tackle and a rookie in Talise Fuanga. So that's a huge potential source of problems for this team that otherwise I think has the firepower in Derek Carr and that receiving core and the talent.
But I think that's the worst case scenario. Like the worst case scenario is the offensive line is as bad as advertised. It is the worst offensive line in the NFL. We can't protect Carr. We can't do any of the running schemes that Kubiak wants, and it's just a huge issue. With that being said, that probably is what gets you to 7-10. That's probably is what gets you to 8-9. And 8-9 is still above the win total. I do not see a world where even if we have the worst offensive line in the NFL, we drop to like 6 wins. Don't see that. The schedule's too forgiving. It's too easy. Same as last year. Like last year, we could be as bad as we were. Bad enough to turn over your entire offensive staff. But because of the schedule, you still find a way to win 9 games. You still find a way to almost back your way into a division championship. Like imagine think about how bad the Saints were last year. Fans were booing them at home multiple times, booing them off the field. And they almost screwed up and won the division. So we don't need them to be like the greatest team ever to go over the win total or to win the division. And I think that's exactly where they're going to land.
At playmaker to make real noise, it could all be undermined if the offensive line falls apart.
Yeah, this one, our descriptors of the Cowboys where it's just the roster doesn't feel as strong as last year. I feel like that's been the trend here for the Saints. There was definitely a point last year where I thought,
see, I disagree with that. I feel like, I agree with the Cowboys part. I don't think their roster is as strong as last year. But with the Saints, I think the roster is better than last year. The Saints are a team where roster-wise, very stable. People that did leave weren't really impactful last year. As far as like the core, the exact same. The only players that aren't the same are the players that we upgraded, like Talise Fuaga and Chase Young and Willie Gay, like people like that who came in, and those are new players, but they're new players in a positive way. They're new players in an upgrade. So the Saints, they are a better roster. They are a better coaching staff. They do benefit from all these players having last year to get used to each other. And there isn't really a player who it's like, man, they got to get caught up. Like last year, it was like Derek Carr has to get comfortable with this team. Derek Carr has to get used to this locker room. Derek Carr has to get used to this and get used to that. We don't really have that this year. We don't have someone coming in, like I said, like Willie Gay and Chase Young, but they're not the quarterback. They don't have this like, man, we really got to get the locker room used to Willie Gay. Like that's not how it works, right? So that's also beneficial. Like the Falcons do have that. The Falcons do have Kirk Cousins, where the locker room has to get used to him. And we saw with Derek Carr last season, that can be difficult. Communication, timing, all that stuff. It does take time, for sure. So, and that's not even counting the human element of just moving to a new place, moving to a new city, getting an apartment, getting a house, getting your kids in schools. Like that is a real thing.
All of their playmakers were excellent and they should have done more offensively. They were disappointing last year, Sam. Because when we did the show last year, I guarantee we took the over because the Saints looked like the favorite to win the NFC South,
right?
The worst division in football. And similar to this year, they had one of the easiest schedules. They may have been the easiest on paper last year, and they never really took advantage of it. So they didn't take advantage of it last year. Now, new offensive system, and it's a Shanahan derivative, and those things tend to work out pretty well. I think that's in their favor. But I think, player for player, the Saints they had this stretch where they were maybe the best drafting team in the NFL for a 3 to 5 year stretch, whatever it may have been, maybe more. I feel like that's dried up a little bit over these last couple of years. They're not.
But PFF did give the Saints an A+ on this draft. So it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B there.
Getting the same type of production out of their draft picks, but still keeping that same strategy of not attacking the draft in volume. And I think all of that's adding up to just a lesser roster year over year in New Orleans, unless they get, massive improvements from, year 2 players, like a guy like Brian Bresee up front. That's what they're banking on. And I just don't know if they have it. And it's another year where they did not add a ton in the draft from a volume standpoint, just guys that Fuanga and Kool-Aid McKinstry at corner. I like those players. I just don't know if they're doing enough to
that is a lot though. You're getting a left tackle starter day one, and you're getting a starter day one cornerback. Like you're not getting like 4 or 5 starters, but how many teams are? Like how many teams are drafting 3-4 starters a year? Like I think drafting your first round pick and your second round pick being week 1 impact players with starting roles, like I think that is pretty impactful. So I don't know if I agree with that, but I do agree with the whole like draft strategy, lesser roster thing, because when we had Peyton, that was the strategy. Draft lesser players, develop them, and find these diamonds in the rough. Well, when Peyton left, we kept that strategy, and they didn't develop into nothing. We got a bunch of Peyton Turners and Isaiah Foskey's and Isaac Yadams and whoever else is completely fizzled out. I guess you can throw Trevor Penning in there right now. Over the last couple of years, we've seen those players, just kind of fizzle and not be developed, and that happens. That has happened with the departure of Sean Payton. So I agree with the draft, the overall strategy being criticized, but I don't think you can criticize this draft because it did go away from that kind of strategy
to deal with all the roster churn because of the way they've been working the cap.
I mean, I think it shows you how fragile that good drafting thing is.
Yeah.
When you start, I think the real problem there is when you start believing that and therefore banking 100% on one high draft pick to do something, right? So you look at like,
I think it's the opposite. I think it's banking on like a 3rd round draft pick to do something, because when you draft Alvin Kamara and he becomes Alvin Kamara, or you draft, whoever. Or it doesn't even have to be a draft. Like, I'm just thinking of players. But, like, think about just free agents. Think about draft. Think about the whole thing. Just think about adding players. When you get what we got out of Marcus Colston, or when you get what we got out of Jimmy Graham, or Pierre Thomas, or Alvin Kamara, like, with those players, when you get that much value and impact, same as the Rams last year, when you get the impact they got from Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams, you look like a drafting genius. That doesn't always happen. You can be a great drafter. I compare it to like playing like video poker or something. It's like if you play video poker enough and you hit a royal flush and you win $4,000 or something, it's like, man, this guy, damn, he's making a killing playing video poker. But you don't always hit a royal flush. Like you can play perfect. You can play perfect game theory. You can play the most optimal strategy possible. But you're not always going to get a royal flush. You're not always going to get 4 of a kind. You're not always going to get a huge lick. So same with the draft, where you can kind of have this overall theme, overall strategy. You're not always going to find your Puka Nacua. You're not always going to find your Alvin Kamara or your Marcus Colston or your Jimmy Graham. So it is very volatile, and I think that's why the draft is so, I don't want to say overrated, but I think the idea of like being a good drafter, or the idea of like the Patriots went through that, right? The Patriots went through it where it's like everyone thought the Patriots were the greatest drafting team ever because they found Tom Brady. But then you actually go back and look at it, and it's like, man, they couldn't draft at all. They whiffed on like 90% of their picks. They just had Tom Brady. It's like, oh, the Patriots, their franchise, they just churn out great players. They know how to develop these players. Then you look at the names, and it's like they didn't develop a single player besides Tom Brady. And the only other players that you could even argue were developed were wide receivers who benefited from Tom Brady, like Julian Edelman, right? Then you go look at the rest of the picks, and it's like, man, they were just whiffing. They were just nonstop whiffing.
How many of New Orleans' problems would be immediately erased if Trevor Penning was already a top-tier left tackle, if Brian Brzee had looked like Jalen Carter, right out of the gate, or even Kobe Turner on the defensive side? I had another one as well that I forgot, or if Peyton Turner, had been a difference maker on the edge. Like even if just those 3 players, if they had all hit the ground running and been the correct answer, right, and been difference makers at those positions, you'd be looking at this roster and be like, yeah, Saints are great. They're in pole position, but because they put themselves in this position of, like helping their own farts too much when it comes to draft talent identification. Jesus. Like, it's fine. We go get our left tackle. We go get our impact defensive tackle. We go get our new edge rusher, and we're great. Only none of those guys so far have been good. Now they might turn it around, right? Brian Brzee in particular is extremely young or young in the role. But it shows, I think, how dangerous that is as a plan to go, well, we've been one of the best drafting teams in the NFL. We need a left tackle. Go get our left tackle. He's the guy. And then if you go on a run of just like three of those guys don't pan out, it makes a material difference to the overall roster very quickly.
7.5 though. I mean, it's like a Derek Carr led team. It's not, I mean, there's still a lot of talent there for the Saints with the easiest schedule, second easiest schedule. It's really tough to say under 7.5.
Yeah.
You see the struggle here, Sam? Like, I want to drop an under in there.
Yeah, but you can't find one.
Can't find an under. How am I going to find an under?
Well, like if you told me, and I agree, like I think there are legitimate concerns with this team. But if you told me, the Saints are going to struggle, the Saints are going to have a bad year, offensive line will be a problem, Saints will be disappointing and go 8-9. I say, okay, well, you're still cashing a ticket. You're still cashing that regular season win total over. And at the end of the day, cashing tickets is what it's all about. So the fact that we can under-deliver, we can have a disappointing season and still go over this win total, I don't think there's any way you can go under 7. I really don't.
Find an under.
Where are you going?
I'm going to go over with the caveat that if Ryan Ramczyk ups and retires before the season, can I have a wit without Ryan Ramczyk?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
it's our show. You can do whatever you want.
This is another good example, and I know these guys know this. I don't know why they're saying this, but Vegas knows. Like, it's already built into this number. Vegas isn't waiting to hear about Ryan Ramczyk's status. They already know his status. And the fact that these guys don't know his status as far as like the contract and why he can't retire and all that is disappointing. But he can't retire. He cannot up and retire. Even if he wants to retire, he cannot because of the contract and all that. And if you're Ryan Ramczyk, why would you retire when the Saints are basically telling you, hey man, just don't retire and we'll give you however many millions of dollars? Like, I wish they told me that, right? So that, one, he cannot and will not retire before the season. 2, the number is already baked in that he's not going to play. 3, he's not going to play. So this Ramczyk thing, the Ramczyk thing is just like a shiny buzzword, I think, for people who don't really know what's going on with the inner workings of the team. There aren't updates with Ryan Ramczyk. I'm not concerned about the updates of Ryan Ramczyk because I know he's not going to play. So does this number. I mean, this 7.5 is telling you it's already, like, that's something, I always say this during the regular season, but when you see a number, Vegas already has the information. They already know. Like, I think it's hilarious whenever people are like let's say the Ravens are 1-point favorites against the Browns. And then someone's like, I'm taking the Ravens because, I mean, they got Lamar Jackson. And it's like, you don't think Vegas knows who the quarterback of the Ravens is? That's already part of the number. You have to think beyond that. You have to think beyond their players. You have to think beyond Lamar Jackson is good. Me like Lamar Jackson. Like that you're not catching Vegas off guard with that,
Ramczyk, I'm going over. Without him, I'm going under.
I'm just not excited about the Saints and their direction, but they probably go over 7.5 though. I'll just take the under. I'm doing a balancing act on this one. I'll take the under.
Yeah, man, that's shocking. It really is shocking. And they're not pulling up the schedule. They're not breaking down the games, which is also shocking. But like, it blows my mind when people are like, I don't like the direction of the Saints. And then you look and it's like the Saints had the same amount of wins as the Buccaneers last year. The Saints lost the division on a tiebreaker. Okay. So what do you mean you don't like the direction? The Saints, and I apologize for the lighting changing, ladies and gentlemen. It's like a sunshine situation where the sun shines, which messes up the color contrast, and then the cloud coverage comes in, which messes up the color contrast. So my apologies for that. I know it's kind of throwing you off. But if Derek Carr doesn't get hurt in Green Bay, the Saints are 10-win NFC South champions. Would people like their direction then? I would assume they would. And then you could go a step further. I won't. But you could go a step further and say if Foster Moreau doesn't drop a pass against Jacksonville, the Saints are an 11-win NFC South champion. Then what? You don't like their direction? Rebuild, blow it up, can destroy it? Doesn't make any sense. I don't understand how 9-8, same amount of wins as your division champion, upgrading your roster, upgrading your coaching staff, and people are like, yeah, I just don't know. I don't like the trajectory. So the trajectory is up. We are moving in a positive direction. The Atlanta Falcons would have cut their arm off to win 9 games. They haven't won double-digit games since 2017. But no one's going to tell you that this offseason. All they're going to tell you is they love their trajectory. They're NFC champions, Super Bowl favorites. All right, they're just going to tell you love where they're headed. Oh yeah, well what about them going 7-10 for the last 4 years? How are they on an upward trajectory? Because they have Kyle Pitts? Because they have Michael Penix holding the clipboard? I just don't. I mean, I'm getting pissed off because I have to listen to these guys, and I don't mean just PFF, but I have to listen to all the analysts come on here, whether it's NFL Live or whoever, Rich Eisen or PFF or whatever, and they, you know, the Saints need to rebuild. The ESPN article we did on the live stream. Saints need to blow it up and rebuild. They were 9-8. Again, they were a Derek Carr shoulder away from beating the Packers in Lambeau. Jordan Love, everyone's giving him the MVP this year already. People think Green Bay has found their franchise quarterback. Packers won 10 games last year? They are that injury away. That's the difference. Like that's the difference in this analysis is Derek Carr's shoulder. If Derek Carr doesn't get hurt in that game, I don't have to sit here and listen to the Saints need to tear it down and rebuild. The Saints are on a downward trajectory. I'm not excited about what's going on in New Orleans. And if that is the real game changer between a team's roster of tear it down or keep going, or a positive trajectory or a negative trajectory, that's crazy. That is insane. That is way too granular. You got to look at a big picture. You can't look at one result of one game and make everything off of that. It's crazy. Now let's go ahead and look at the schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and give them wins for Carolina. I'm going to split Atlanta and split Tampa. So Carolina, split Tampa, split Atlanta, sweep Carolina. So that's 4 right there. All right, Philly were dogs in that game. Dallas were dogs in that game. Kansas City were dogs in that game. Denver, we should win. Chargers is a coin toss, but we probably should win. The Chargers probably will be bad, but I'll say coin toss. The Giants, we should win, but even that's a coin toss. Green Bay or Washington at home, we should win that game. That's 6. Vegas at home, we should win that game. That's 7. Okay, so we're at 7 wins already. The win total is 7.5. If we just win those games, win the games you're supposed to win the games you're favorites in, 7, okay? You are 1 coin flip away. And we're talking about the Chargers. We're talking about the Giants. We're talking about the Browns. We're talking about the Rams, both at home. We're talking about another game against Atlanta, another game against Tampa. There's a lot of options there for one game to go your way. So out of the 7, we have 7 wins. We have stacked 7 wins. So let's look at the games that we're relatively a coin flip away. This is DraftKings, their odds. They have odds up for every game. All right, so let's try and look for the Saints here. So the Saints are 3-point dogs against the Eagles. Okay, so that's kind of a coin flip, but let's try and find for more of a coin flip. Let's see, keep going. All right, keep looking here. Anything under 3 is an absolute coin flip. Let's see here. Okay, so we're giving the Saints the win for the Bucks. We're the favorite. We're the favorite against the Broncos. It's hard to do. I wish you could sort by team. Chargers were a 3-point dog on the road, which means that's pretty damn close to a coin flip. I'm not giving I don't think the Chargers home field is not that strong. Oh, this is why it's throwing me off. They have the Saints logo for the Jets. That's why it's throwing me off. Because I keep seeing the Saints logo, but it's the wrong thing. All right. Okay, now we're getting into the real coin flips, I think. Or the games we were talking about as coin flips. All right, the Rams. Here you go. The Rams and the Saints. Saints at home are 1.5-point dogs. That is a 50-50 situation. Okay, that's one of the coin flips. Giants were favored on the road. Okay, then we play the Browns. So where's the Commanders? Were big favorites on the road. Let's see, where's the Browns? Because the Browns is another one that kind of surprised me. Man, what is up with these logos? Look at this. Now the Saints have the Dolphins logo. What the hell is going on here? Raiders were 2.5-point favorites at home. Man, DraftKings, get it together. Get it together. Bucks at Tampa were only 2.5-point dogs. So that's a real coin flip as well. Man, where is this Browns game? Because the Browns was another one where it was like we were like 1-point dogs at home, something like that, which I thought was kind of surprising, but shows you that these are legit coin flips. It shows you that it's not just me saying this. Like this is what the odds are. There's got to be a better way. Look, the Steelers have the Saints logo. This is nuts. Come on. Johnny Avello and the guys. Here we go. Saints at home against the Browns. Saints are +2. So another coin flip. So I'm giving you 7 wins, but then the Rams, the Browns, Tampa on the road, Chargers on the road, all those games are a 3-point game or less. Most of them or less. And we just need 1 to go our way to go over the win total. You get 2, you get 3 to go your way, all of a sudden then, and that's not even counting upsetting Kansas City, not even counting upsetting Philly, not even counting upsetting Dallas, not even counting those. Not even counting upsetting Atlanta in Atlanta. None of that. We're not even getting crazy here. You start winning some of those, that's how you get to 11 wins. That's how you really get over it. But again, I don't see any way where you go under 7.5. Ladies and gentlemen, get on in the comments below. Give me your predictions for the Saints schedule. Give me your prediction for the win total. Are you going over 7.5? Are you going under? And tell me why. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video.